inclusionary practices of master scheduling and flexible service delivery. At the Herring Center for Inclusive Education at the University of Washington, we continue to be thrilled to partner with OSPI in our exemplary demonstration schools. We took the feedback from our previous webinars where attendees repeatedly mentioned that they wanted to hear more about some of the specific inclusionary practices demonstration sites discussed utilizing their school. Okay. Let's just hold on one moment while we get our slides ready. Great. All right, so we are here today to do just that. We want to take a deep dive into master scheduling and flexible service delivery with Mark Twain Elementary. So joining us today are inclusion specialists from the Herring Center for Inclusive Education. My name is Naomi Fair, and I'll be guiding us through the webinar today. Lisa Dickinson, Eileen Schwartz, and Cassie Martin are also here joining us today. And our project coordinator, Molly Lyman, is here in case you experience any technological difficulties. So before we dive in, let's make sure we are set up for the webinar. As we get started, please test your audio in the bottom left-hand corner of the menu to ensure you pass. As this presentation is in webinar format, all participants are automatically muted and no participant videos are on. So thank you in advance for sharing comments and ideas in the chat today. Because of the number of people participating today, we'll be limiting our responses to questions via the chat, circled in green. If you'd like our presenters to answer a question, please use the Q&A feature instead, circled in yellow. We'll be recording today's webinar, and it will be provided on the Herring Center's demonstration site webpage. The recording from today will be available by the end of the week. So let's practice in the chat. Please take a minute to share what impact you hope today's webinar will have on your school's inclusionary practices. We will be able to reference this information later, and it will be useful for us in future planning. Friendly reminder that if you have questions, we'll be doing our best to monitor and respond in the Q&A on the bottom of your screen. So what impact do you hope to have today from today's webinar? We'll let those kind of continue to come in. I hope to increase my understanding of inclusionary practices in action. Wonderful. Learning more about scheduling at the elementary level. Absolutely. Continued and exponential growth of the inclusion work. Wonderful. Great. Just to support the team. I love that. To learn more about how to best support kids in their general education classrooms. Wonderful. So appreciate everyone's participation. Keep those coming and we'll continue moving on as they come in. So as we go through the webinar, please keep this webinar etiquette in mind. We encourage a growth mindset where you're open to thinking about new ideas and willing to push yourself to grow. Thank you for joining us today, for being present, positive, and engaged. So to start, here is a little background information about the Demonstration Sites project. In the fall of 2019, OSPI launched the Inclusionary Practices Professional Development Project. The Herring Center partnered with OSPI to coordinate and lead this part of the larger statewide project, creating model demonstration sites that highlight inclusionary practices across Washington state. So the Demonstration Sites project was developed to provide educators from around the state with the opportunity to observe inclusionary practices in action, meet with school teams, collect artifacts that aid in systems change, and learn about how to implement inclusionary practices in different school contexts. Our demonstration sites highlight the diversity in our state. They include urban schools, rural schools, and schools in some of our largest and smallest districts in Washington. In collaboration with Herring Center Inclusion Specialists, the original intention and future intention of this project is for demonstration sites to host visiting schools to show high leverage inclusionary practice. By sharing these practices and opening their doors to teachers, administrators, families, and community members, it allows visitors to see best practices in action and apply them in their schools. At the same time, the demonstration sites themselves continue to grow their inclusive cultures and refine their practices that contribute to equitable learning for all students. Clearly, right now, we have some constraints around literally opening our doors, but have been doing our best to pivot to provide transformational learning using virtual platforms. And this is how you will hear from Mark Twain about master scheduling and flexible service delivery. And if we could go to the founding principles slides, that would be great. So I'll continue on. There we go. There are some founding principles that drive our model demonstration sites work. To start, in every school, there are things that are working well. In education, we have the tendency to examine the problems associated with our practices, instead of examining what's working well, why it's working well, and how we can use that information to make things better. This asset-based approach is a productive way for schools to leverage their strengths to become more inclusive. Also, inclusion is not a special education initiative, but is a cultural shift in philosophy and practice. If we simply change the way we deliver special education services without considering the culture of the school or how all students engage in teaching and learning, we will never make the changes we need to truly impact student learning. Through the course of our webinars and by way of scheduling virtual visits, districts, schools, and communities can learn more about what steps are taken to make these shifts to a more inclusive school. Both our first and second cohorts have shared their amazing journeys toward a more inclusive education for all students. These journeys occurred over a number of years and involved engaging in several high leverage inclusionary practices, including the practices of master scheduling and flexible service delivery, which Twain will be highlighting with us today. So we'd like to hear more about you first. We will start with some polling to see who is joining us today. So you'll see a poll pop up. Please let us know who's here. Great. Seeing administrators, teachers, specialists. Wonderful. Family, district leaders. So a nice representation across the board. Wonderful. So with that, we are very, very excited to hand things over to Twain as they walk us through their deep dive on master scheduling and flexible service delivery.
All right, thanks, Naomi. Thanks, everybody. We know everybody's busy at this time of year. If you're like us, you're in the midst of bringing kids back into the system, but we're really excited to be able to share with all of you a little more in-depthly the work that we are doing and the journey we're on. We're nowhere near completing it. We're nowhere near experts at it either. So I want to make sure everybody knows that, but I think we've done some pretty amazing things for our kids here at Mark Twain. I'd like to start with introducing who you're going to hear from today. I think it's really important. I'm Craig Mott. I'm the principal at Mark Twain. This is my 9th year in this fabulous school and community. Also joining us today will be Malia Goodfellow, our associate principal, Clara Yamakawa, who is an interventionist focusing on English language learners. Kelly Marth is our school psychologist. Manjeet Pohar is a paraeducator within our special education department. Alicia Poling is a special education teacher. Denise DeWalt is our school counselor. And then Amy Lanham and Julie Thomas are both safety net teachers. In Lake Washington School District, safety net is essentially reading and math interventionalists when We go to math if we have the opportunity, but they focus on reading. And then finally, Emma Albertson is a third grade teacher, as well as the lead for that grade level as well. Mark Twain is one of 30 schools in elementary schools in the Lake Washington School District. We're a large school with approximately 680 students. We also have a large staff, close to 100 certificated, classified, and support personnel who come to work every day. So we have not only the unique challenge of having a large school, we also have to navigate our staff and support our different aspects of learning on a daily basis. As you can see from our demographics, we continue to grow, not only in student population, but in terms of our diversity. As you can see from 2016, we continue to demonstrate what is pretty normal right now in the Lake Washington School District in terms of large amounts of families wanting to attend our schools. So we're not an abnormal statistic. We are just one of many schools in our learning community that are growing at this pace. As a building, we have 3 special education service models that serve approximately 75 to 80 students daily. The first one is what many schools would call a resource model, which has historically been a pull-out model for specifically design, instruction, and content area. We have 2 district programs that have been placed at Lake Washington or at Mark Twain. The first one is a learning center where we have 2 classrooms. This learning environment provides the highest level of service and support for our students in terms of developing growth within the school. And then this year we added a newest program. It's an IC, which is a behavioral-based program providing services and support for students who have qualified with an IEP in behavior. As I said, the last 2 programs are district programs and have historically been located at only certain schools throughout the district. And so for us, this has been something of a little bit of a conflict in terms of our inclusive journey, but also the catalyst for some of the change that we're going to talk about today.
So some of the inclusionary practices at Twain include master scheduling, flexible service model, and accessing core. And these are ones that we talked about at our first webinar. Today, we are going to dive a little deeper into the master schedule and flexible service. And these 2 practices really overlap and combine. And today we're going to highlight those 2 and how they work together to ensure that our students are accessing core. At Twain, 97% of our students are in core instruction, and we do not have a traditional pull-out model.
So how did we get started? As Malia said, we have looked at a number of different ways to look at supporting our systems. And one of the first things we looked at was the development of the master schedule. And historically, a master schedule, even when I came here, was developed by the specialists. There are a number of reasons for that. And as a new principal at a new school, I actually welcomed it because I was trying to learn the culture and what was going on. But there was also some background reasons to that piece. And a lot of that had to do with staffing. Buildings were generally staffed, or our building was staffed with a full-time PE, library, and music specialist. And then depending on if we needed additional staffing, we ended up getting itinerant staff. Itinerant staff typically are staff that we share between buildings. And so that creates a little bit of a challenge when you're developing a master schedule. That master schedule then is dependent on the cooperation between yourself and another school. It also becomes dependent on the space that you have available. For us, Our itinerant PE teacher had to teach in the cafeteria. So in middle parts of the day when we were trying to do lunch, we couldn't provide PE to certain levels or certain groupings of kids. And so we're really confined by those different barriers. The other part of it is we're a large school. As a large school, you tend to have many lunches in order to meet everybody's needs. And so that time frame, if you don't have additional space, as I mentioned, starts to impact where you can start to put your specialists. And historically, our specialists, specifically itinerants who worked with our youngest kids, and our more established staff worked with the older grade levels. And so we had to work around those different pieces. The other piece is that you have to take into consideration the other schools' master schedule at that point, as well as creating planning time and travel time. And so all of those different variables and factors went into you know, historically what we did and started to lead to the mindset change that we were looking at. The other two areas, special education and primary, are also other ways that I've seen master schedules develop in terms of making sure intervention being provided by special education has become a priority, or looking at core access to content for primaries in the morning with specialists in the afternoon. And what we started to find was all of those things are important. We don't disagree with that. But what it was becoming very limiting in terms of the options that we could do. And it also became one of those mindsets that we wanted to try and break and try new ideas. So along came the new perspective, and part of that perspective was gathered by us being able to do site visits to some of the other demonstration sites or other schools and seeing what they're doing uniquely. The other thing was talking with our intervention teachers and an intervention program with the school district and understanding the importance of core instruction. We know that gen ed teachers are the best instructors for our students, regardless if they're on an IEP or whether they qualify for reading or ELL support. And so one of the things we wanted to be able to do was ensure a number of different things around core instruction. And so we really took an interest-driven approach. What we were hearing from our staff was it was really important if we were going to move forward, we needed to have common planning. And what did that look like? That interdisciplinary grade level teams had to include everybody at the table. So not only your gen ed classroom teachers, but we also wanted intervention teachers and anybody who potentially could be working with these students to have a voice at what was going on. We started to hear from our own students that their voice was they didn't want to pull out model. They wanted to be staying in core instruction. And so we were like, okay, how do we go about creating that schedule and that system of instruction to make sure we're meeting all of those needs? And then the last piece of it, which is really important and part of what we believe as a whole with our inclusion process or our inclusion journey, is that it needs to impact all students. We want an authentic community and an authentic culture that we're creating within a classroom. And so we have always heard, you know, providing intervention and so forth for those kids that are just below grade level, but we also wanted to make sure we're meeting those kids that were on the higher end of the spectrum of learning and demonstrating 3s and 4s and how we were going to challenge them. And so we came together as a larger group and developed a mindset that we were going to tackle master scheduling in our day around what we call core plus more. And core plus more is that all students are accessing core curricular content. And so as we flip to the next slide, there's an example of kind of what we've come up with. And this is a little bit different because obviously this is this year and we had to pivot that compared to what we've done in the past. But what we've done is we actually started with core content block. And so if we are talking about math, we would create a math block in place first and say all students are going to be accessing math at this point. But we also recognize that we have students, whether they're on an IEP or whether they receive intervention services, that they needed support. And so what we added to each core block was what we call power groups. And power groups are designed to be intervention, remediation, and challenge to our students, for all students. And so we created a block of math, for example, for kindergarten that would go for a period of time. And directly after that, they would go into a power group. That power group is data driven. It was collaboratively determined by the team. And so you also had, like I said, the gen ed teachers as well as the interventionalists working together to make sure that these power groups were hitting areas that kids needed. They were also flexible, which was important for us. We wanted kids to be able to have an exposure to a large group of kids. And so in a typical school year, we would have all kids, if they were in the building during their power group time, would get up and they'd shuffle throughout the building. It was an exciting time for them because they got the opportunity to see some different kids. But it was also an exciting time for staff because they were able to, at that point, get to see kids that they don't typically get to interact with on a daily basis. And so what it did allow us to do was students who were receiving IEP services or specially designed instructions did not lose core instruction, but they also didn't lose their services because we also created time, and it could be a flexible group. It could be someone who was on an IEP along with a student who was reading service support, or it could have been a student who was ELL all in the same group. And what it did was didn't create a stereotype or a sense of isolation that some of our kids felt when they were constantly being pulled out of class.
Some of the organizational systems that we have in place to support this is our staff working together collectively. And that includes really everyone thinking outside the box from traditional roles, paraeducators thinking outside of the box of, I pull this small group of students and do a reading intervention, and now, possibly doing a gen ed group as well. We also increase our staffing support K2 so that our foundational skills are really front loaded so that as the kids get older, they're not needing that level of support. Common planning was another really important piece for grade levels to have interdisciplinary common planning teams. We also started first with ELA and then added math when we first started power groups. We started the year doing ELA, and then as we got more comfortable with the systems and the processes, we were able to add math. We also have a school-wide MTSS system that very much supports this work. We have an active SIT team, we use PBIS strategies and other supports to help make sure that we are always looking at data and making decisions about students in their best interests. A common assessment tool is also one of the really important pieces to this work. The first year we did this, we did not have a common assessment tool and we had to pick some things from various sources. Now we use FastBridge as a district, and that's been a great tool, although it's been remote, and we're looking forward to when we can use that in person as well to progress monitor. And then also data teaming during that common planning time and having that common data point to look at together. So for practical application of this, you are going to hear from various staff members that were introduced at the beginning. They're going to share what their role is in flexible service and how it impacts students. They're each going to tell their own story and their own role and how they've seen it impact students. And as Craig mentioned before, it's also really important that we point out that this is a process and a commitment that we've made. We live and breathe this every single day. We talk about it every day. We tweak it every single day. And we are still working towards improvement every single day. And so we are in no way have arrived at the perfect model just yet, but this is where we're at in our journey. So first off, Emma Albertson, our general education teacher, is going to get us started.
Hi, this is my 7th year teaching at Mark Twain, and I'm really fortunate to work with 4 other amazing 3rd grade teachers. We've been working on strengthening our inclusionary practices for the past several years. The first and most important step in this journey for us was developing a mindset of each of us being a teacher of all third graders, not just the ones in our class. This built trust between us and set the expectation that we are all accountable for helping each student learn. It's powerful for our students because they see that multiple teachers are invested in their learning, and it lays the foundation for us as teachers to work together to best support them and each other. And any success that we've had has really resulted from our meaningful collaboration and the respect and support that we've shown each other as teammates. We apply this mindset to our core instruction and to our power groups. We create access points for students to engage with our core instruction, and we bring together third graders from different classes to deliver targeted small group instruction during power groups. Working with each other's students allows us to understand all students better. When we're talking about a specific student during our planning meetings, at least one or two other teachers have experience working with that student, and that allows us to collaborate more effectively to support them. We expected that power groups would have positive effects on our students' learning, but the pleasant surprise has been to find there to be non-academic benefits as well. Because of how our schedule is structured, we're able to have all third graders receiving this smaller group instruction at the same time. Our students have access to the core lesson, and we don't have students leaving our classrooms at random times throughout the day for special education or intervention support. We're able to go all in at one specific time, and this keeps our students from being left out from other subjects and learning opportunities. Our students really look forward to power groups because they get to interact with students from other classes. They've been able to form connections with students and teachers that they may not have otherwise met. We hear students say things like, "I'll see you in power group," and "I hope I get to be in a power group with that teacher." And that's when we knew that this was making a difference in their daily lives at school. There's a stronger sense of familiarity among the students and teachers, and our students feel more connected to school, which then results in them feeling more engaged in their learning. Power groups have helped us provide meaningful instruction to every student while simultaneously strengthening our school community. A crucial component of this is having common planning time as a team. We meet at least twice each week for just under an hour each time. One of the things we do when we meet is fill out a weekly planning template that helps us stay on the same page and plan for the following week. We've always worked together to map out our curriculum, but the additional step in our planning that we added this year was to discuss each student's learning goals, barriers to learning, and supports to address those barriers. When we discuss the barriers that we anticipate students may have in reaching the learning goals of a lesson, we can intentionally plan supportive resources that will make the learning goals accessible to all students. For example, when planning a math lesson on rounding numbers, we would discuss how the lesson's learning goal requires a certain number of number sense that not all of our students have. So to make the goal of rounding numbers accessible for students, we work together to develop supports, which could include scaffolds such as manipulatives or visuals, like a hundreds chart or a number line. And we build these supports into our core instruction instead of using them as a response for students who don't understand. We found that this intentional planning supports every student because a lot of the resources that we use to support students receiving special education services are beneficial to many other students as well. We work as a team to create access points to core instruction for all students, and then we're able to share these with the special education and intervention staff. Since we as third grade teachers are the most familiar with our standards and curriculum, this has empowered us to think and make decisions about how to effectively teach all of our students. In collaborating with special education and intervention teachers, we're able to share what and how we're teaching, and they can then use those access points to further support our students in their learning. Some things haven't changed. We still have students at widely varying levels, and they need different levels of supports or types of instruction to help them learn. But what has changed is that as general education teachers, we are planning opportunities for each student to be included in our core instruction, as opposed to them receiving replacement instruction in a different setting. So I am going to now pass it off to one of our incredible paraeducators who I'm so fortunate to work with, Manjeet Pohar.
Thank you, Emma. I hope everyone can see me. First of all, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge my appreciation for all of the educators at Twain who teach from their heart every single day. It's very obvious. You are amazing, and I'm just a very small part of that. So I'm the lucky one to be working with all of you. Thank you for everything you do every day, big and small, to make the children, all of the students feel like they belong, for creating that sense of belonging in the school community. So just wanted to start with that. One of the big things with power groups, as mentioned earlier, is the inclusion factor. General education and power groups work in unison towards a larger goal of engaging all students. So regardless of where they are, my role in that is meeting students where they are at and providing and helping to provide meaningful learning experiences. Even within a group, students can be at different levels of understanding, and every effort is made from start to finish, the teacher end of it, all the way to when they're in that lesson, to make the learning inclusive. Part of facilitating the lesson is to determine where the students are at on the spectrum of understanding, and to tailor the lesson in a way that ensures that they're all getting what they need. So whether that's review or reinforcement, some form of enrichment, or something in between, it's all kind of built into the power group lessons, and nobody's sort of falling through the cracks. It's not uncommon to simultaneously give one student a review question and another one a more complex problem within the same power group lesson. The focus is to identify the student's strengths and to build on that. The complexity and pace of the power group lesson is adjusted as necessary. Even as a lesson unfolds, the goal is not to finish, but to progress in a way that every student feels like there is some progress being made. So they leave and they feel like they've learned something, either, you know, from what they've done or what they've heard. So it's not a race to the finish line. It's more just to progress in a way that everybody feels success. Power groups are a platform for building a rapport between peers, but also between students and educators, as Emma had mentioned earlier. As a facilitator of power groups, I can provide opportunities for those interactions, both on an academic and social level. The smaller groups afford some advantages that may not always be possible in a larger group setting. And I have the chance to make sure that each and every student is seen and heard. Something as simple as asking the kids, how are you doing today? And letting them give me a thumbs up or thumbs down sets the stage for that lesson where they feel like they're being heard. You know, is there something you want to share? Is there something you're looking forward to? Just a couple of minutes. And the kids know that you're listening and that they are being heard. And I feel like that helps them be more engaged. It's more effective to be able to do that in a smaller group than it would be to ask 25 students in a classroom the same question. Furthermore, given the small group size, I'm able to get to know the students on a more individual level. This allows me to incorporate some of their interests into the lesson. For example, for two of the students that I work with, I know that they love Minions. So at the beginning of a lesson, I will have a good morning or a good afternoon message with this huge Minion cartoon, and immediately they are like, hey, and they're happy and they want to be there, and then we just go forward from there. And it's a very small thing, but depending on the day, it'll work. It'll engage them. And again, you can do that in a small group setting, and power groups are amazing for building that connection. Aside from the subject area that's being taught during power groups, I have the unique opportunity to help students build other skills. For example, a non-academic goal for one of my students that I was working with was to be able to greet his peers and teachers independently. And I was able to build that into the lesson very seamlessly. Just every day that I worked with this student, I would, make sure that I asked her, listen to him. And if it didn't, I would kind of prompt him to say what he needed to say. And I could do that all easily without singling out the students. So power groups are an amazing place to build those social skills as well. The collaboration aspect of it, again, it's already been mentioned, but as a para, I'm basically a go-between in a team of educators on the spectrum who are sharing their experiences and expertise. And it's a continuum. I take the guidance of the general education teacher and the special education teacher and incorporate that into either helping with the lesson planning if I'm able, or just implementing it. The general education teacher provides information about the general education curriculum and assignments by sharing a weekly plan, as Emma had mentioned. And in that weekly plan, the assignments are broken down. We have information about what barriers the students might encounter and also supports that you can use. And we can apply some of those in power groups as well. This allows for uniformity in planning and implementing the lessons, and I can make sure that the approach that I'm taking is mirroring as closely as possible the approach that the classroom teachers are taking, again, to keep that uniformity and keeping it on a continuum. The special education teacher provides information about the students' IEP goals. And again, I can have those in the back of my mind or in the forefront, depending on what it is, and try to incorporate those things and take them into account, whether it's academic or behavioral. From there, I have the option to use a lesson provided by the teacher or design my own lesson based on the information that I've gotten. And having said that, it's important to emphasize that this will look different for everybody depending on your own comfort level and the teacher's preference as far as your involvement in the lesson planning. It is not one size fits all, and flexibility and differentiation are two really important parts of power groups in terms of the students and the educator side of things. And it's the same for everybody. We all have to be flexible, and we all have to kind of change things as we go, and we all have different strengths that we bring to the table. As a para working closely with and observing smaller groups, there's an added bonus of interacting with them in a more personal way. And that allows me to gain insights into, things like their areas of strength or areas of concern that I might notice that maybe the teacher didn't notice. Something that might come up in a smaller group because the student feels more comfortable. Regular communication with the teachers is an essential element of my role as a paraeducator. I'm the bridge basically between the students and the teachers in terms of collecting useful data and information, whether that's anecdotal notes or actual numbers from test scores, and making sure that information is reported back to the teachers. That could be email. It's easier to document and refer back to if it's an email, but also in person if that's what the teacher prefers and if it's actually possible, which, I mean, in this case with online learning and things, it's not always possible. Letting the teachers know what worked well and what didn't work well, providing them with information in a timely manner, allows them to revisit plans and make necessary changes. This helps to ensure that all students are gaining maximum benefit from their power group time. And ultimately, my goal as part of the power group team, as a school team, is to create a welcoming environment for the students and to provide opportunities for them to work to build academic and social confidence that they can then take to other aspects of their life, other aspects of the school setting. And so that's what I do. Next, I would like to introduce Denise DeWalt, our very amazing school counselor.
Thanks, Manjeet. You did awesome, girl. Way to go. Hi, everybody. I am Denise. I am the school counselor at Twain. And as you can see from the PowerPoint, my main contribution to the master scheduling and power groups is that I have jumped in and joined the specialist team. And when I was first asked to do this, to have a consistent weekly schedule all year in grades 3 through 5, my mind kind of went directly to hesitation with thoughts of, well, that's not normally what counselors do. I might need more flexibility than that to run our counseling program. What if I'm needed in tier 3 interventions? So a little hesitation, but I also had thoughts of, wow, well, look at the curriculum I could cover, the relationship building I could do, and the focus on common language and school climate. So with these competing thoughts, I really tried to put my hesitations aside and said yes. And so joining the specialist team allows for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers to have common planning, which in turn has fueled well-driven and well-prepared power groups, and not to mention a wonderful year of weekly lessons for me. As the school counselor, the cultural mind shift for me with inclusion has happened in a few aha moments. And so I wanted to share a few stories with you today. The first one was in a staff professional development meeting where we were discussing barriers for students. And this has always been a priority for me as the school counselor. But for some reason, this day it was different. The idea of what is the adult problem versus what is the student's problem really reframed it enough that I took a deeper look inside of me. And so that next week, I was teaching a lesson in a 5th grade classroom, and I was showing a video from our curriculum that I love. And I wanted to enter a deep conversation with our 5th graders about how can we become more empathetic people. But during the video, one of the students happened to be loudly talking with the paraeducator. And I became kind of frustrated because I couldn't hear the video very well, and I felt that it was losing its power for the class. So I quickly scanned the room to see if anyone else was affected by the noise. And I noticed that not one student had turned their head, looked annoyed, wasn't even bothered. They were all intently focused on the video, completely unfazed by the talking, unlike me. And so I noticed that day that these 5th graders really understood inclusion more than I did. And they had already learned that this person belonged as their classmate. They had a relationship with her, and flexibility came easy for them. And I saw the power firsthand of how daily inclusion led to greater acceptance. And I had not experienced their classroom daily, but they had. And they taught me a lot that day about kind of shifting the way I see things to the way they see things. It was pretty powerful. And I actually had a similar experience recently, just this year when teaching in a 1st grade classroom. I had asked students to share with me a short story about what tool they were using to solve small problems. And one student raised his hand and started to share. And for some reason, he was really struggling to find his words. He was sharing and had long pauses and piecing his words together very slowly, and it was taking a super long time. And immediately my brain went to, what is my next step in keeping this lesson moving? Should I interrupt to help the student get through this? And then all of a sudden, unprompted, I see a handful of 1st graders turn and look at this student, and they begin to wiggle their fingers towards him. And I had never seen this before. And the student noticed, and he sat up in his seat, and he clearly spoke out and successfully finished his story. And completely shocked, I just asked the 1st graders, you guys, what does this mean when you do this towards someone? I've never seen that before. And they said, oh, Ms. DeWalt, we were just showing the love. And I then learned that showing the love was a sign that students could give to each other if they feel that a classmate might need some love or encouragement or strength. They said, it means we see you and we want to hear from you. And I just about dropped on the floor that day. Here I was so worried about the pace and success of my own lesson when the students showed me that day how to just pause, take a deep breath, and show the love. Suffice to say, Ms. DeWalt received the SEL lesson that day from students once again. So wrapping it up here, all my hesitations of flexible scheduling are gone. The what ifs are gone, and I certainly know that I'm not the only Tier 3 provider of services in our school. Many coworkers at Twain can jump in at any time and provide support if I'm in the classroom, and I really do love being in the classroom as much as possible. I've been really grateful for my aha moments, and I hope that I can just continue to grow and get a clearer vision in regards to the inclusion of all students. So thank you for letting me share my stories today. I would like to introduce now 3 teachers from our intervention team. We have Julie Thomas, Amy Lanham, and Clara Yamakawa.
Thanks, Denise. I was going to show you the love. I love that. So like she said, my name's Amy Lanham, and I'm one of the Safety Net reading intervention teachers. With our master schedule being set to serve all students at the same time, we as Safety Net and SPED and EL teachers have had to be very intentional about who and how we serve our students. We want all students to receive the core instruction from their classroom teacher. In the past, that was really tricky because we were pulling kids at all different times of the day, and the classroom teachers were doing different things at those times, and kids were missing out. And it was really a struggle. But now with our master schedule, it makes it so all of our kids receive that core instruction at the same time and don't miss anything. However, because of the master schedule, it also only gives us a 30-minute power group time with our students. So we have to work together as colleagues to see what the needs of each student is, and we have to be very intentional in what services they get. For example, if we have a student that has reading difficulties but is also an English learner, we have to look closely to see if they need instruction in reading with an intervention teacher, or if they would benefit more with language acquisition instruction from an EL teacher. So we place students in a need-based group accordingly, regardless if they have an IEP or if they're English learners, so that their 30 minutes of power group time is really targeted instruction and it's most beneficial to them. Since our students have been started coming back into the classroom from remote learning, last month pretty much is when we started, our current safety net positions have changed. And so we are now serving students from both Twain and another school. Sometimes they're all in the same group. We have kids from one school and our school in the same group. And it's been really interesting for me as an educator to see the different lens that different schools use to serve students. And it's made me really realize how much my own beliefs have changed over the years and how far Twain has come in the last few years. Our common belief that we do not replace core instruction is really huge. And now that's the lens that I use to know how to best serve our students. And now I'm going to introduce my teammate, Julie Thomas. She's going to discuss some of the ways we determine what instruction our students need during power group time.
So once we determine that a student would benefit from reading intervention, we really want to make sure that that instruction is going to be targeted and effective. So we have a couple tools that we use to accomplish this, multiple assessment measures and progress monitoring. Our screener FastBridge helps us to identify students who may need intervention, but it doesn't give us all the information that we like to have when we're forming our power groups. So using more than one assessment helps us to determine what type of instruction a student might need. Is it phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, maybe comprehension? So for example, a second grade student might have a really low fluency score. By giving that student additional measures of assessment, like a phonemic awareness assessment, a phonics screener, and getting information from their classroom teacher, we can try to find out why that fluency score is low. And then we can plan instruction that works best for that student. So now with power groups, we screen, we look at data together as a team, we decide which students need a closer look, and we give additional assessments. So we've learned that gathering as much information as we can has helped us to make more informed placement and curricular decisions, which then makes our intervention time much more effective. Common planning has given us the time to really sit down with grade level teams and dig into that data, talk about students, and develop skill-based groups, and even to decide the focus of each power group. What should it be? So we might have second grade groups that are focusing on comprehension strategies, while other groups might be more phonics driven. The other tool that we use to inform our instruction is progress monitoring. So frequent targeted progress monitoring is a component of our FastBridge assessment, and we usually progress monitor each of our power group students every other week. So that helps us to evaluate how effective our instruction is. Do we need to change strategies or groups for a student? Because we do that if that's what the data shows is necessary. So while progress monitoring might not be new to us, we've done that for a long time. The common planning and power group time has really helped us to use those results much more efficiently. We share and analyze data in teams and make sure that kids' groups are meeting their needs. The other really powerful component of progress monitoring is that it allows our students to be aware of their own performance and their progress. Because of our power group model, we've become much more intentional and focused in our data tracking. We've learned so much the past few years about really targeting our instruction and about making learning visible to our students. So they know where they are, they know where they're going, and they know that they have help in getting there. So now here is our EL colleague, Clara, and she's going to talk more about the benefits of our common planning time.
Hello, everybody. I'm Clara. As mentioned by Julie, the master schedule allows for intervention staff like me and the gen ed teachers to have a common planning time. The biggest impact of having common planning time for me has been that I can help provide resources for Tier 1 instruction. Before going into specific resources, I wanted to take a moment to explain this awesome illustration that I found on a 2020 WIDA bulletin on collaboration. So before having common planning, if you look at this 20th century paradigm, I was in this little EL bubble, the one with the 2 kids in the red shirt, with a small group that I pulled out. And the only impact I had was limited to the students that I saw in my small group. Also, what the students were learning with me in my small group and what the students were learning in their classrooms were at times just disjointed. Now with common planning, we share resources to all teachers. So we're all on the same page. If you look at the 21st century paradigm, I love how they have all the teachers in green shirts, just indicating how we're all on the same team, and that all the students in the middle are students. Imagine the impact of all teachers using the same vocabulary visuals, the same hand gestures, the same sentence frames, especially for English learners. And some of my students benefit tremendously from that consistency and that repeated scaffolding, both in the classroom and in power groups. Malia, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. As I mentioned, the biggest impact of having common planning is that I can provide resources for Tier 1 instruction, which I wasn't able to do before. So through our meetings, we find out what some of the barriers to learning might be. Much of the time for EL students especially, it is usually a lack of background knowledge or a lack of vocabulary. So as EL teachers, we find videos for background knowledge. And then we also create a lot of vocabulary visuals. We put gestures to vocabulary words, and we also make a lot of vocabulary games. From my experience, at first I made a lot of resources for language arts, but as I built trust with teachers, I have also been able to help with math, science, and social studies vocabulary words, which is really fun to do. At times, we also come up with a common sentence frame or word bank to be used for the academic language. It is helpful that the same sentence frame for, let's say, compare and contrast, be used consistently in the classroom and in the small groups. It is huge that all students, including English learners, get access to the grade level content with the gen ed teacher. There are also certain resources that I create specifically for English learners that I see in my power group. These include scaffolded reading and writing resources made with Clicker 7. These resources are shared with the team in a file in Teams or by email, and it is used for any student that might benefit. This way, if one student is going to a SPED or safety net power group during intervention time, that teacher can also access these EL resources and use them as they see fit. Next up is our wonderful special education teacher, Alicia Poling.
Hi, I'm Alicia Poling, and I'm one of the special education teachers at Mark Twain. I'm also the 504 monitor. First, I wanted to touch on how having a master schedule supports inclusive learning environments and provides support so that students can make progress in the general education curriculum while working on other essential skills in the general education classroom. The way the master schedule is built is that there's core instruction, so reading or math instruction, and then built-in intervention right after the core instruction. So that's where our power groups come in. And at Twain, it's called the Core Plus More model. So all students receive core instruction in their classrooms, and then they receive additional instruction and power groups afterwards. So all students receive core instruction plus intervention or extension instruction. So having a master schedule is the only way to allow kids to participate in both of these learning environments. Another benefit of having a master schedule is having common planning. So a lot of us have already talked about common planning. At Twain, common planning is defined as scheduled planning time that occurs at the same time each week and allows all interventionists and grade level teachers to meet to plan for next week's lesson. So during this planning time, teachers discuss curriculum, standards, access points, activities, grading, Common planning allows teachers to identify barriers to learning and problem solve them. Some of the common barriers that teachers face are additional support that needed to access the text in the classroom, a limited amount of level materials in a classroom, limited opportunities to practice a new skill, additional time needed to complete assignments, lack of opportunities to model articulation or pronunciation, lack of options in grading, and lack of visual aids to support comprehension. Identifying these barriers to learning in a team environment causes a cultural shift. Barriers become more general rather than subgroup specific. For example, language acquisition can be a barrier for many kids, not only for kids who are learning English as a new language. So having teachers plan for all kids and share resources that were historically defined by program type has been a huge change in our practices at Twain. In our flexible delivery of services model, students benefit from having curriculum specialists, language specialists, social emotional specialists, reading specialists, all of these specialists planning activities together. When collaborating for all students, everyone feels a responsibility to help all students make academic progress, which requires a cultural shift in thinking. Instead of focusing on the well-being of your class or your program kids, the team thinks about all the students and what supports can be useful for groups of students. Access points provide entry points for students to participate in the learning that's already taken place in the classroom. An access point can be defined as an entry point for students who require higher level of supports to access the general education curriculum. Access points do not change the standard, rather they provide a way to participate in the learning taking place. So access points can be as simple as providing an audio version of text for students, or it can be more involved and involve more scaffolds and supports such as adapted graphic organizers, communication boards, and level text, etc. So practical application, what does this look like? So a huge cultural shift in our practice at Twain has been the realization that special education is not a place, but rather a portable service that provides various levels of support to access the general education curriculum in classroom. Overall, I think one of the biggest things we have learned on this inclusion journey is that we need to unlearn the idea that kids who receive specially designed instruction must go to a certain room to receive it. Furthermore, we need to unlearn our expectations of what a classroom should look like. Once we start to let go of these old ideas, we can envision how an inclusive, equitable classroom benefits all learners positively. So here's an example of how we can carry supports to the classroom and provide specially designed instruction in the general education classroom, or also how we provide a flexible delivery of services model at Twain. Currently, third graders and fifth graders are completing a unit on opinion writing. The level of support students need varies throughout the grade levels. As a result, the team will deliver core instruction plus provide tools to complete the essay. These tools include sentence starters, graphic organizers, specialized checklist, text-to-speech, student examples and models, additional support for revising and editing, the option to type, the option to write and draw pictures, the option to use dictation. All students can access these supports in the general education classroom. Students who need more individualized support can access additional support during small group time. General education teachers and special education teachers provide small group writing support. Using these supports, students can create opinion essays that meet the criteria in the rubric and achieve the grade level standard. As a result, all students feel successful and competent since they were able to complete an essay alongside their peers with the supports they needed to be successful. So part of the reason that Twain has been successful in creating inclusive learning environments and providing specially designed instruction in unique ways is because of the role of the school psychologist in IEP team meetings. So at Twain, our school psychologist is very knowledgeable about the continuum of services that a student can receive at Twain. As a result, she can educate parents on the resources and supports available so that their first contact with Twain is a positive one that encourages inclusivity. Furthermore, we have seen students exit from special education services and move to a 504 plan because of the progress and level of supports provided by the grade level teams at Twain. So I'm going to introduce Kelly Marth, who is our school psychologist.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I think for me, that is the most exciting thing, is seeing that these power groups work and they're helping kids, like Alicia just say, exit from IEPs to 504s or altogether, and they're helping kids just get the intervention they need without being referred for evaluation in the first place. So really awesome. So like Alicia said, I'm Kelly. I'm the school psychologist at Twain. This is my 8th year at Twain. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how the job has shifted for me and the benefits that I've seen in this new kind of paradigm, or this new era at Twain with the flexible service delivery and power groups. So when I started at Twain, it was just the very traditional old school model of, kids. You had your kids in general education, and then some kids would go to the resource room, and we had a self-contained classroom. And if kids in general education had some difficulty, maybe they'd be referred for reading intervention. And if there was still difficulty, I would get a referral for evaluation, and we would meet and we would talk about it. And there was a lot of pressure put on that referral team to actually do an evaluation and to qualify students, because we felt like that was the way to get them help. Okay. And it came from a good place, but what we've known and what we've learned over the years and what our research tells us is that just qualifying a student for special education to get them help, that's not equitable. And it really changes their trajectory, especially if you're not using inclusive practices in your school. So one of the things that I'm really proud of our school for doing is coming up with this flexible service model and these power groups and master schedules so that we can remove barriers to needed intervention. So we no longer have to necessarily label a child or evaluate a child for special education services for them to get access to the curriculum that they need. And also all the children are benefiting from being able to work with a reading specialist, an EL specialist, whatever power group is the match for where we've identified their skill needs are. And we found that our referrals have gone down for evaluation, which is super cool. So what do I do with all this new free time on my hands? Well, I don't really, because I still have a lot of evaluations to do, but I have fewer evaluations to do. And what I get to do instead is much more fun, is I get to be involved in the pre-referral process. And we, over the past 3 years, have really started to build a very robust student intervention team. So because we have this great framework for these power groups for providing interventions, it really lends itself to a student intervention team. So when we have a student that we're concerned about, either social, emotionally, or academically, we meet together as the student intervention team. And what's really cool is we can get the special education teacher, an OT, an SLP if needed, the administrator, the interventionist, basically all these different experts from our school, paraeducators, instructional assistants, coming together for a student intervention team and really brainstorming on behalf of the kiddo. And it used to be, I'd say 7 years ago, that a typical general education student just referred, who was having difficulty. We didn't have a formal venue to get all of that expertise in one place on behalf of that student. And now we do, and it's really cool. And again, it works. So what we're doing is I now attend way more student intervention team meetings than I do referral meetings. We meet once a week or once every other week, and we usually meet for multiple students at a time, and we will re-meet on the same student. And we will keep checking in until we either get a satisfactory outcome, like they no longer need us to keep meeting, the plan is working, we're just going to roll with it, or until we decide together as a team based on multiple sources of data that we then want to refer on to evaluation. And I'll give you a specific example. We had a student start with us this year who came from another school for kindergarten, and then now she was in first grade, and she was coming to school in person to learn because she needed some extra support. And just socially, behaviorally, she was having a lot of trouble acclimating. And she had a lot of, I guess, some challenges in kindergarten too at her previous school. And we had talked to the previous school. And honestly, like 6 or 7 years ago, we probably would have referred this child for an evaluation to determine whether she had a developmental delay in social emotional. But instead, what we did was we convened our student intervention team, and we got the special education teacher, the paraeducators, instructional assistants who work with this child, instructional assistants in this case, in person, the general education teacher, administrator, counselor, all of these folks in the room every few weeks to chat about plans for students. And different teachers made visual schedules and made different, came up with reinforcement systems and gave advice, and we came up with our plans, and we kept meeting until now. This little girl's doing phenomenally. No labeling required for her to access that. So that was a really powerful story and a big celebration for our team. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, I don't want to take up too much of your time, I could talk all day on this issue, I just love it so much, is that when it does get to the point that we do still do evaluations. When it gets to that point that we're doing evaluations, we're not rushed to do them. We feel like, because students are accessing high quality intervention, we feel like we can take our time and really collect good intervention and progress monitoring data to really see how a kid's doing. And when we do them, we have a robust evaluation team because kids know so many different and have worked with so many different staff members of the school. I have data from lots of different teachers in lots of different perspectives. And I will have already known of the student and maybe even have observed the student well before that point. And so it really feels like we're doing higher quality evaluations that involve more voices and more data than just the testing from the school psychologist, which just makes for a much richer experience for all of us. And it's definitely in the best interest of the kids. And again, it's working, and we're really proud of it and the outcomes that we've had so far. So with that, I will turn it back over to Malia.
Thank you, everyone that shared. As you heard from all the amazing educators here, we've started some really great things here. And as I said before, we continue to learn along the way and adjust and make changes. And some of the things that we're still working on are protocols for common planning and kind of the critical questions, and ensuring that when we're having common planning conversations with our interdisciplinary teams, they are student driven and based on data and making decisions for what's best for students. We also, in COVID, we found it to be a little bit more difficult for data teaming. So as we bring kids back in person, bringing that back into our common planning and interdisciplinary meetings. We also learned this year, especially in COVID again, onboarding new staff, and that we need to develop some systems so that teachers that are new to our building understand our mission and vision and why we are where we are and why we do what we do, and what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. Another piece that we're working on is dismantling conflicting structures. For example, some conversations that we have are that some of our more restrictive settings have a lower caseload for our special education teachers, or they might have additional paraeducator time associated with them. And that feels a little bit counterintuitive to the work that we're doing, and how can we work at the district level and beyond to dismantle that. And we are always looking for training and professional development. And as a building administrator, we often have district initiatives and building initiatives that we need to work together on. So we're always on a day-to-day basis having those conversations about how we bring in the professional development that we need, specifically around UDL or partnerships that we have, and make sure that we can align that with the district training and make it all meaningful to everyone.
Some additional takeaways that we continue to learn, and what we want to stress with our staff is we need to approach this work with a flexible and open mindset. As a building team, we are given an amount of staff at the beginning of the year, and rather than say we can't do this, this group of individuals here come together and think about how we can do this. And for us, that's really important. I think sometimes we get stuck in paradigms, and as educators, we continue to do the same thing that we've always done. And one of the things that this group of professionals have talked about, and what we've seen throughout this whole journey, and partnering with our parents and partnering with the Hearing Center, is that you have to have an open mindset. You have to be willing to think outside the box in order to maximize staffing or maximize resources as it's aligned to what you do on a daily basis. Diversifying your leadership. Malia and I are in a big school with a big group of students and a large staff, and we want this to be not our initiative, but this is something that our staff is working towards. And obviously, it's a little more difficult to do it at a building level, but our goal ultimately is to create system change within our school district. We have colleagues that are doing some amazing things too, and what we want to be able to do is create some opportunities for shared collaborative discussions so that we can make this more of a systemic change, rather than what we'll term vapor, that we do it for one or two students. We want to do it for everybody that comes to our school. As we've mentioned, you have to live and breathe the work daily. It is constantly reflecting, are we creating barriers as a staff to inclusive education and our inclusive practice? And so we're constantly calling each other out, or we may be looking at each other going, yeah, this is a great idea. And then someone comes back and says, have you thought about it from this perspective? And that's really important, because I think sometimes our best intent ends up with creating more restriction than we really wanted to in the first place. Again, we want to look past labels. As Malia talked about the conflicting mindsets, we have a couple programs in our school, but what we don't want people to think about is that those kids are there because that's a placement. It's not a placement. We want those kids out of that scenario and in an inclusive education. We're willing to learn. We're willing to push ourselves. We have some partnerships with the TIES group out of the University of Minnesota, along with the Hearing Center, because we want to learn. We want every student who comes to Mark Twain to be part of an authentic community and learning and growing as they go through Mark Twain. And then again, I can't emphasize enough, you have to think outside the box. I think it can be very limiting, and I've had colleagues say, well, you got more of this staff. And I'm like, if we always operate under that mindset of that, we're never going to go anywhere. And so one of the things that we did originally early on, we said only certificated teachers could do power groups. Well, then you have individuals like Manjeet, and we have a number of other paraprofessionals who have amazing skill that we're like, oh my God, we need to get them in front of kids because they can do amazing things to empower kids. And so we've actually expanded it to involve instructional assistants and paraeducators as part of our power group instruction. So that is an awesome thing for us, and it wouldn't have happened if we just didn't think about it or try it at this point. So one of the things we want to challenge you as our audience, because this is something we're constantly challenging ourselves with, is what could you do tomorrow to start the process? As a building administrator, we're constantly re-examining the master schedule. I have probably rewritten our master schedule this year alone with the way we've done and had to deal with COVID at least 3 or 4 times. We started the year with a master schedule that was for a remote world, ensuring that we are still focusing on common core access to core curriculum and our power groups. We just recently started to bring grade bands back in the building, and we're trying to make sure that we still stay true to what we believe and what we think is important, and that's accessing core instruction and starting to build our power groups back into a hybrid schedule. Rethink your staffing and prioritizing parent voice. I think we all talk about prioritizing parent voice, but we have a strong partnership with our parents, and those parents are the experts of our students. And so we want to make sure that they have an equal voice when we're making some of these decisions. As a teacher, we obviously want to create an authentic community within your classroom and advocate for all students, regardless of where they're coming from or what challenges they may have. We want every teacher in our building to say, those are my students, I want them in my classroom, and I'm going to be the best teacher for them in that situation. And obviously we want to implement instructional strategies around UDL. For our support staff, and as a staff member, we want to facilitate authentic friendships in all environments. As a central office member, let's start looking at different ways to model in staff buildings. I think we always get limited and hindered by the way funding works, but there are some pretty amazing things happening across buildings in the state where funding is way less, and they're doing a lot more than some of these other buildings and so forth. And then as a community member, we want our community to advocate, partner, and ask questions. Why not? And that's part of where we got to where we are. Parents started to ask us, hey, my student's in a district program, but you keep promoting the fact that you're a community-based school. Why can't they be at your school? And as an administrator who's selling we're a community-based school, I had to reflect and start to turn around my thinking and start to advocate to our district, say, you know what? I want all kids who live in our community to be at our school. And then the last piece we want to just make sure that we highlight is obviously we have resources and artifacts that we want to share. We have a number of different master schedules for the last couple of years that you can look at just in our thinking. We've also built in specialist schedules that align with that master schedule, because I think that's always a different piece that we want to be able to look at in terms of the working school day. We've provided some student work samples highlighting access points. That's been really important. If you're going to be in an inclusive base school, you better be able to create access points for all students into a gen ed classroom, even in a remote world. And so our grade level teams have worked really hard about creating those access points that doesn't change the standard, but creates the access point for students accessing that Common Core curriculum. Vocabulary practice and obviously sentence stems with Clicker 7 software that we use a lot. We have some teacher-made materials along with UDL access points. And then we have a team planning template highlighting designing for access. So we hope people find what we've talked about today as one colleague to another. I would encourage you to challenge the paradigm that your school is living in. And I can tell you it's been highly rewarding for myself, but I think also for our staff. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
So a tremendous thank you, Twain, for sharing this in-depth look at master scheduling and flexible service delivery. So let's do a quick share in the chat. What are the systems, culture, and/or leadership practices you heard about today that support inclusive schools? And what are some initial steps you can take back to your school? And we'll read some out as they come in. As they come in, I'll just say I can't thank you enough, Twain team, for taking us on this journey. You've highlighted so many key inclusionary practices today. We're just so grateful to you all. Great. So many of the resources and artifacts that we shared today, as well as information to reach out to us and to the Twain team, will be shared on our website when we post that after this webinar within about a week. So to, we'll just wait one second to go back one slide, please. So to learn more about our demonstration sites project and OSPI's inclusionary practices, professional development project, we encourage you to visit our website or feel free to email uw-demosites@uw.edu, and also to visit our website where we'll be posting this recording. And like I said, the artifacts and resources from today. Great. So we'd love to leave today with an understanding of where people are joining us from. In times like these, it's especially important to feel that sense of connectedness as we engage in this ongoing work together, even across long distances. So if you are able, please open a separate browser using that link that was posted. And with this link, you should be able to click on the map to show us where you're joining from. Do your best to get your location as close as possible. If you don't have access to a separate browser, or if your location is not represented on the map, place your location in the chat and we'll be happy to add it in later. Thanks. We'll add that in. I see some coming in through the chat. Wonderful. A lot of representation there in 121. Nice. Thank you for contributing there. Great. So we would love to get feedback about our session today. This will give us information we can use to effectively share demo sites, inclusionary practices in webinar format in the future. Please click this link and fill out the brief survey through Google Forms. This survey is anonymous, and Molly will be sending clock hour forms to those who are in attendance after the webinar. We just can't thank you enough, and thank you to OSPI and CSTEP for their partnership in this project. Another amazing, huge thanks to Mark Twain for your truly inspiring work. And thanks to all of you for joining us today to learn more about inclusionary practices and for envisioning how you might take some of what you learned today and apply it to your schools. We hope you will join us for future webinars, and that when our doors open again, you will take advantage in person and visit some of our Washington State demonstration sites. Thanks everyone so much.